still genuinely believe that I am a true engineer. Graeme, by the way, mate, your physics grades are pretty good here. Like, you should really think about a career in engineering. So I ended up going into this integrated master. So I basically knew I had a 5-year road with like kind of roadmap in front of me. And I remember sitting one night in the uni in the library, and I got this message saying, "Congratulations, we'll see you in 2 months in Hong Kong." I remember being like, my mum is going to absolutely kill me here. So I did 8 months in Aberdeen, and then I went over to Denmark, and then I spent the last 8 months back in control systems, but in the Middle East, out in Qatar. Completely fortunate to be exposed to a graduate program like that, touching it and being part of it and understanding how that operates in that traditional engineering sense, which is fundamentally, if you think about engineering, it's about logic, it's about system thinking, it's about those sort of things. They are absolutely core components to everything I do in my job now. Engineers of the future will have to truly work in unison, in parallel with AI. We will need to find ways on bringing the physical world with the digital world and sort of finding connection points to those. I think the world's biggest problems are engineering based. I really genuinely do. I think it's just so important for our future, and I'm incredibly passionate about that and just want to keep flying that flag from the tallest building I can get on.
Welcome to the Engineer Career Podcast, Graeme. Great to have you on board.
Josh, it's an absolute pleasure, mate. It's awesome to see you again. Long time coming, this, I think. Yeah.
This is a very long time. It's I've watched your career through the platform which is LinkedIn over the last few years, and as AI's beginning to kick
going
off.
back and forth on LinkedIn a lot, mate. We're like continuously
Yeah,
shooting each other on now. I appreciate your support.
that's exactly it. Yeah, I'll need to get the check through to you. But no, it's really great to have you here. I'm so excited from a personal point of view to hear about your career, and then from more widely, the engineer community, the students and the graduates that are following, to really immerse themselves in what can be starting at Strathclyde and now the other side of the world, immersed in the world of technology and innovation. It's so exciting. So let's start off where we always go from, Graeme. And what sparked your interest in engineering?
All right. Well, yeah, that's very kind that you saying all those words. I think what sparks my interest in engineering, you know what, for me, like, I'm definitely in innovation now. I talk about all the buzzwords, all the AIs, I talk about that all day, but I still genuinely believe that I am a true engineer. Like, I'm absolutely fully bought into that. And I don't know if that's from education. I don't know if that's just having now done 10 years in industry. Like, but I'm absolutely locked in it. And like, I think about it all the time. Like, a bunch of my life just revolves around, like, almost like engineering 101 principles. Like, I'm a very logical guy. Um, Everything seems to be sort of systematic in my head. Like, it's just pretty ingrained into you. So I think just absolutely passionate about that. And I just think when I look about all over the place, it's just engineering's driving everything, right? So for me, it's just, yeah, I'm absolutely bought into engineering. I think it's a phenomenal capability, a phenomenal skill set, and a phenomenal real industry, I guess, if you think about engineering as an industry. Yeah.
Brilliant. So I guess going back to school, which is a terrifying thought for the two of us,
Right.
to go back to that. What was the kind of main areas that before you chose to go to Strathclyde University? What were the main areas that you excelled in, and did you translate that to engineering in school?
That's a good question, and I think when I look back, so yeah, for the listeners, Josh and I sort of grew up together, so this is why it's kind of funny being back speaking to you. But we grew up, and I went to a local school just next to where we were raised in. Yeah, my high school there was very much pretty straightforward stuff. Like, I just sort of got involved in everything. I was pretty active in a bunch of different things, and when I look back now, I sort of think that I guess my focus at school sort of lent quite heavily on the, I guess, what I would call the arts, if you call it that. So I was like really focused on music, did a lot of that stuff. I focused on languages, which I think is quite creative, and was really focused on that. And then, yeah, things like, I don't know if this class still exists, but I was really obsessed with like graphic communication, like GraphCom. I don't know if that's still a class
Yeah,
anymore, but
yeah,
very
it's
much sort of
all
like
about, yeah.
yeah, design sort of architectural stuff. And actually, like a fun fact about this is that when I was going through school, I was going to be an architect. That was like my dream. I was off to do architecture. And then I guess subconsciously, what I didn't really realize is that I was pretty good at maths and physics and the sciences, right? So, yeah, I'm kind of when I was at school, I was that was kind of my focus, and I was going off to do architecture, and I had this amazing teacher. And if anyone who listens comes from Parkmates, there was a really famous teacher there, a guy called Roddy Glenn. Mr. Glenn was his name, absolute legend of a guy, and he was the physics teacher. And one day, I'm 16, kind of, we're going through work experience, and I went off to an architect's firm to do that because that's the skill I was wanting to do. And then one day, he sort of pulled me in. I was walking by his classroom, he pulled me in and said, "Graham, by the way, mate, your physics grades are pretty good here. Like, you should really think about a career in engineering." And Josh, I didn't know any engineers. There was no one around me, like from a family perspective, that were engineers. So I didn't really know what this was, but I just knew that he said it, and he was. I guess I look back now, and he was a bit of a mentor. And yeah, and at that point, I can still see that one discussion I had with him, and it was a complete mentorship moment where he said, "Graham, I think there's something in this for you." And literally at that point, maybe I was 16, 17, and I was thinking about uni and stuff, and that was literally the point where I thought, well, hang on a minute, I'll try out this engineering thing, and that just rocketed everything. So yeah, I was supposed to be in architecture. That's what I was supposed to be doing, and then, long story short, ended up having one discussion and went into engineering. Yeah, there you go.
Brilliant. I love stories like that, Graham,
Mm,
because
mm,
there's a lot. I think as I've kind of immersed myself in this, you tend to see statistics and you hear organisations talk about how it's generally parents that have the biggest influence in where you're going, and
yeah.
which therefore means that if someone's I always class it as the engineering mindset or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
capable within the kind of engineering world. If they've got that and then someone doesn't see it and doesn't give that wee bit of guidance, then
Oh yeah.
we as a industry can lose that.
Oh,
So I guess
100%.
it debunks the myth that not everyone out there follows what their parents
Oh,
advise them to, and there's
yeah,
teachers out there as well that can
yeah.
guide that.
Like I like a lot of my. It's kind of funny because you only do sort of these random reflections into your family, but a lot of my family are what I would call like public service. So my dad was in the police, my mum was in and still is in the NHS, my sister's a teacher, all these sort of things. And just growing up, there was never ever any sort of private sector or if you call it that sort of private sector engineers about me. So I didn't really know what it was, but I just fundamentally now know that I was good at maths, I was good at physics, and I had a bit of a creative flair to me. And I think if you actually look at that as a melting pot and you think about what
Yeah,
engineers are supposed to do, they're supposed to solve hard problems by being creative. And sometimes
that's
it's
it.
good to be good at maths and physics. So yeah, so it kind of worked out well for me like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely the one. Definitely the
Mm.
one when you describe the melting pot. I always kind of discuss it as the physics, maths, graphics kind of like triangle, or you
Yeah.
take physics out, put chemistry into it. I mean, you can add more into it as well, obviously, but
Yeah. Yeah.
when you see that, you're kind of engineering's at the core of it, and if you're visual, then it's even better. Um,
Absolutely.
so talking about visual, being a mechanical engineer, you went on to study electrical and electronic engineering, which to me is like
Oh,
the
oh,
that's where that's where the real engineers go and pick, especially
I know.
nowadays.
Yeah. It was funny because so what happened at that point was so I was supposed to go to architecture, decided against it, ended up going and applying through UCAS is still a thing, aye. This will show my age.
Yeah, yeah,
UCAS,
that's right.
yeah, yeah.
Yep,
So I applied to UCAS, and I remember I put in three applications. I applied for there was aeronautical engineering, which was at Glasgow Uni at
that's
Glasgow,
right.
and then I did electrical and mechanical at Strathclyde, and then electrical and electronic at Strathclyde. And I remember this was in my fifth year of uni, so they came back and said you get conditionals, you're good to go, but you get conditionals. So I had to do the advanced. I ended up doing like advanced hires in my sixth year in maths and physics to fundamentally get in. But yeah, I ended up sort of having three. Now when I think about it, three pretty different sort of degrees in front of me in a way. And
Yeah,
yeah, all engineering. I was kind of just scattering out to see what sort of I don't know, just I guess where I lay in the market. I don't really know. I didn't really know what degree I was going to get into, and then I don't know what happened, but fundamentally, yeah, I ended up selecting the electronic and electrical engineering one at Strathclyde, and I look back now with zero regrets. It was a phenomenal, I think, a
yeah,
good idea at the time. Yeah, so yeah, it was great. And
yeah.
then,
I think.
on you go, mate.
No, sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, like, I think, like, looking back now, that would have been back in far out 2008, maybe something like this, 2007 into 2008. And yeah, and then and I actually got in at that point. I don't know if they still do this. They might do, but I ended up going into a direct 5 year program. Is that still a thing?
Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
so what tends to happen is you do direct, so it's like integrated masters they'll call it. So you
Yeah.
do your 4 years and make sure you get the grades into your fifth. Yeah,
So
that's
that was it.
same things what
Yeah.
I
So I ended
did.
up going into this integrated master. So I basically knew I had a 5 year road, like, kind of roadmap in front of me of this degree. And there ended up there being another guy, a guy David Kilpatrick, who was around from where we're from,
Yeah, yeah,
and he ended up going into the same degree. So basically, David and I ended up just kicking about for 5 years in this degree. So yeah, so it was a really good decision at
brilliant.
that point. Yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think there's not many people who pick Triple E and get through it that it's a bad decision from. But you know,
Mm,
I guess what's really powerful from your side and something that is really important is to when someone recognizes their strengths and then they get on to that kind of first step that then aligns with their strengths. You know, there's nothing
yeah.
kind of not worse, but it's yeah, that guiding kind of mentoring role that their teacher played there was almost invaluable for you. So talk me through
100.
the 5 years in at Strathclyde. What was the anything that stood out during that time in terms of classes, courses,
Yeah.
anything within the degree that you kind of particularly enjoyed now that you were starting to home in on a specific part of engineering?
Yeah, so what? So I remember this kind of the way it happened. So we went into that first year. First year felt quite heavily like a repeat of my sixth year of uni because I'd done the advanced hires. So it just felt like it was a great settling year into uni. Like I just felt that was a really good thing to do, and we sort of progressed through that. I got to the end of my first year, ended up going over to America to do Camp America. Have you ever heard that? I kind of just decided I
Yeah,
wanted
yeah,
to go and do this and ended up out there for a few months and then came back for my second year. And I think it was probably in the second year where I started to sort of think, okay, cool, let's sort of really truly delve into engineering here and let's really start to get involved in things and got really actively involved in the uni, joined the sports team, joined the different engineering clubs, started kind of really getting what felt like my courses aligned to really key areas of interest. So started getting a lot more focused on like power systems and controls, and it was just purely of interest. It just made sense to me. It sounded like a really good course and started to do that. But one of the things that I definitely felt, I remember thinking this in my second year because it was the year after I'd went to America, I came back, started to feel this, and you'd start to hear stories of graduates who'd graduated out of Triple E and were on to the big and bad things, and it would be things like I'm making this up because I can't remember the exact companies, but like I remember people saying, "Oh, yeah, I've got a graduate position at BP or whatever it is, and but I ended up I did 3 internships throughout my years at uni or National Grid. I did all these internships, and now I've got a full time placement." And I remember getting a wee bit sort of like taken aback because I genuinely was just understanding what engineering was, and it felt like people were locking themselves into this like not just company, but locking into that area. And what it was definitely starting to show me throughout my second year was that engineering can be lots of different things, right? So I remember sort of getting a wee bit of a panic about, hang on a minute, internships and all this feel a lot for me. And it just felt a bit overwhelming in a way. And, progressed through that year, ended up back in America to do another year, another summer in America, because I guess it was more, I was scared of kind of locking myself in. I came back in third year, and that's when I really started to get quite heavily involved and definitely into deeper controls and networks and kind of a lot more triple E based stuff. The any exposure to mechanical or whatever that was in the periphery or generalized engineering sort of went away, and we started to get quite heavy into those topics. And that kind of just opened this amazing door of all the research facilities that Strathclyde had at the time. There was people doing doctorates of doctorates on some amazing application or some amazing technology, and you're starting to see all this robotic stuff come alive. And it was genuinely my third year that I thought, far out, this is an amazing degree to be part of. And it was just amazing to see the funding as well from almost like the government coming into the university to develop and build out. And yeah, it was just a really, really great time. And then, without telling too long stories here, but basically that then I kind of have always open to opportunity. I always had my ear on the ground to just hear what things were going on. And I knew I wanted to be part of more research based stuff. Like I enjoyed the classes and I enjoyed the theory and all this, but I sort of wanted to get more hands on. So I kind of, this is kind of me down to a T. I sort of get really in my head and I sort of just do things by myself, and then something happens and I think, oh, far out, I should probably tell someone about that. And I remember one night I was sitting in the library and I'd applied to go and study abroad in Hong Kong. And I hadn't told anyone. I just sort of applied, like, just great idea, that'd be really good. And there was this university in Hong Kong that was offering this year abroad, but it was kind of more research focused and engineering. And I thought, I'll apply. And I remember sitting one night in the uni in the library and I got this message saying, congratulations, we'll see you in 2 months in Hong Kong for this year. And I remember being like, my mum is going to absolutely kill me here. Like, I'm screwed here. So I went out and I phoned her and said, here, I'm away to Hong Kong. And that opened up my fourth year, which was really the turning point for me. But yeah, my first 3 years at uni were very, very much through that story. Went over to Hong Kong, got really involved in research. The facilities out there were amazing. The study abroad program was fantastic for exposure. You started to see how the rest of the world operated and thought about engineering, which pushed the boundary for me. I wouldn't say I excelled, but I started to question, you know, sort of the theory more. I started to see it in practice more as we were building. I kind of focused on power systems, basically, kind of small microgrids and of the electricity network, and yeah, just kind of really started to see it in motion. So that was great, and that kind of concluded my 4 years before returning back for my fifth year. Yeah, so that's kind of these 4 years of
Brilliant.
madness, but it kind of that story sort of filtered through that I didn't really know, and then started to gradually get more focused on things. Yeah, yeah,
You hit a number of key messages there, Graham. The first one being around the getting work experience, which
oh yeah,
or internships, which is fantastic and something I speak about a lot.
mm,
If you can get the opportunity, great, 'cause it's going to give you. It's probably the most kind of like A to B example of getting an awareness of a career. But you touching on there in terms of shoehorning you in,
mm,
your kind of alternative, which you've discussed, which I think maybe doesn't get spoken about or complemented enough, is
mm,
putting yourself out there. Like you mentioned Camp America twice, getting involved with
mm,
societies, having your ear to the ground, which
yeah,
then almost translates to then applying to that opportunity in Hong Kong. That in itself is a talent, and I think, or it's a capability which anyone can have, is having that kind of outward, open, say yes to opportunities. Keep your eyes and ears, and I always talk about it at events. Like, go to events, you never know
yeah,
who you'll meet. I think that
yeah.
in itself is something that when you realize it, you use it more.
Like, do not get me wrong here, Josh. Like, I absolutely, like, there have people who have done the couple of internships along the way who have done really well, and that worked for them. But I was sort of like this, like, starry eyed kid, like far out. I don't know this topic. I don't know where I want to go. I don't know the opportunities, and I think for me, like, seeing all this investment coming into the unis, the events that people put on, or the the talks at night where they get industry in, like, I attended everything to hear about it
Yeah,
and truly understand that. And but do not get me wrong, like, of course, the sort of industry experience throughout uni is incredibly valuable, but I guess in ways
yeah,
I got that sort of awareness through other things, and that's why the big thing for me was really in that fourth year to look at research, like, apply this to solving a problem. And that was a really big thing for me at that, and that was kind of my, I don't know, just my way of understanding, putting theory into practice was kind of through that channel. And then when I came back, I came straight into my fifth year, and that was where we ended up doing, as part of my, I think it was a group masters project. We got sponsorship through BP for that. So we ended up, and that's where I got really deep into petrochemicals. So we started looking, at the time it was about ultrasonic monitoring of the petrochemical process, was it? And we started building stuff in the lab, and we got sponsorship from BP, and we had site visits, and this sort of whole world, this sort of perfect transition from theory to the real world in a way, just
yeah.
started unraveling. But that's detriment to the university putting that on, I think. But also it's sort of just about being open to that opportunity. So yeah, it's definitely something that I felt pressure of around that industry experience throughout my uni, but I kind of dealt with it in other ways, if that makes sense. I don't know, I sort
Yeah.
of got that exposure. Yeah, yeah.
I'm so glad you shared that. That's really invaluable. Certainly for the number of students that I'm engaging with through engineering career, because the reason I kind of highlight it, because like not the reality is there's not enough placements or experience in industry to go around. That's just the way it is. But there is other ways, and it's just being aware of that.
Well, we had like I remember we started in the I think there was something about 200 people. I remember the number 200 being in year one of my triple E program. And then I remember our master's year, I think someone might be able to cross check this, but like 15 people did the masters. So
Huh.
we sort of had this,
Yeah.
you know, like I'm making up the names because I can't exactly remember the companies, but people like National Grid, SSE, Jaguar Land Rover or whatever, they're coming to the unit, Babcocks, these people are coming to the union saying, we've got 10 placements and there's 200 of us sitting in the room. And it's like, far out,
Yeah.
who's going for this? But you feel that pressure because you think, I hope I'm good enough. I hope am I supposed to have more knowledge of what you do before I apply? Or, like all this sort of stuff goes on in your head. And yeah, it's just kind of funny when I look back and think I was pretty overwhelmed
I
about it
know.
all, really. Yeah. So,
No, no, I think you're similar to all students. I think at that stage, and
mm,
but this is why this is so powerful for you to share that, because you're not alone in that kind of situation. So you're
yeah.
coming to the end of university then, and it's the next big kind of hurdle comes along, and it's finding that job role. Um,
Find a job.
so
Yeah.
think it's bad enough to get a placement, now it's onto a job. So
Yeah.
talk me through your
Mm,
first role, and how you got it, and was it a
mm.
graduate scheme, and how did that come about?
Oh, well, I kind of I would. It was kind of just this sort of placement year, but I've always dabbled in the business side of things. I've always been super interested in it, and I just had this idea that I wanted to go and do this sort of operational management 8-month program thing, and I ended up doing that. But there's a long story behind that. But I sort of dabbled a wee bit in understanding more business 101 and ops 101 because I thought that was important. But really my first main role out of uni, and the one that I think is important to really discuss is Maersk. So I left uni, had this sort of 8 months in this program, and then I just knew that I wanted to be in oil and gas. I wanted to be in the energy sector. I wanted to be part of that. And I applied really actively. I remember really thinking about how to apply for that, attended all the sessions, applied, and I ended up taking a role up at Maersk. So I got a couple of offers on the table, which was lucky. I had one from BP, one from Maersk, and there was another one that I can't quite remember, but ended up taking that company. Now I don't. Do you know AP Miller Maersk? Do you know who they are? I can talk. Do you know?
I don't know them that well.
So this is interesting, right? So AP Miller Maersk is the big container ship company that have the blue star and Maersk across the side, right? Huge
Yep.
Danish company, one of the largest in Denmark. But what was interesting about them is they had at the time 5 subdivisions of the business. One of them was oil and gas, so extraction basically of oil and gas, and the other was the drilling component of oil and gas. So um, they've now sold off into Total Energy, but anyway,
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
they had a huge base up in Aberdeen, massive big office up in Aberdeen. They had 3 assets, technically 4, but they had 3 assets at the time that they were functioning in the North Sea, and they had this amazing program that they put on, and it was a it was like a kind of well, it's 3 8 months, so it's like 24 months, so 2 year program, graduate program, and it was called the MITAS program. So it was Maersk. It was an acronym for Maersk International Technology and Science Program, and basically what it was it would take in a collection of people. So it would take in people, kind of my background, which was focused more on control systems and electrical engineering. You then had mechanical engineers. You then had geologists, or and reservoir
Yep.
engineering as well. So we kind of dabbled more into the oil sector and geography stuff, but kind of this mixture of engineers and geologists. And they took us in, and there was maybe 10 or 11 of us in the program that year. And what happens is you're part of this global program. I don't think it now exists, but at the time it was this global program, and you basically have 3 international locations. So I did 8 months in Aberdeen working in the control systems team, where I spent a bunch of time offshore in the North Sea, on the rigs, and also a bunch of time in the in HQ in the office. And then I went over to Denmark, spent 8 months in the drilling sector of the business, looking at exploration and drilling. And then I spent the last 8 months back in control systems, but in the Middle East, out in Qatar. So I did basically this 3 8 month rotation, which is un see, really, like when you think about
Brilliant.
that, like, unbelievable, right? Completely fortunate to be exposed to a graduate program like that. Like, could not have asked for
Yeah.
anything more ridiculous. But it was basically this 3 8 month rotation, and I just had this unbelievable time of like learning and working onshore and offshore, working out. And I was always offshore. I was never like onshore rigs or wells. It was always offshore. So in the North Sea, so in the Scottish sector, in the Norwegian sector, I was out in the Qatari Gulf. Just unbelievable time. But yeah, that was my graduate program with Maersk Oil. Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah,
That sounds absolutely sensational. Jeez,
yeah.
well, I
So
mean, like, but by that stage, you're Mr. International by that stage. So
I
it
I don't know about that, mate. Yeah, but it was like it was one of these things where you'd kind of like you left uni, you were exposed to this, you were now given true operational exposure. So my role
yeah,
was a control systems engineer, graduate control systems and instrumentation engineer. What that really meant was out on the role that we had as part of that team was out on the rigs and in the subsea network, so the wells, etc. We would manage and project manage and deliver maintenance and renewals of control systems. So that was hydraulic, water, electrical, and then we'd all have the instrumentation as well. So any of the metering that was up on the actual assets, so up in the rig, we would cover that as well. So things like multi-phase flow meters for the petrochemicals. So that would be all the oil, water, and sand and silt and stuff coming up. We would look at multi-phase
yeah.
on that, all this sort of stuff. So yeah, so I remember I got there and into Maersk, and I don't know if it was the first week. It felt like the first day for all I know, but it could have been within the first week or first couple of weeks. I get sent for my offshore training and did all my certification, and next minute I was in a helicopter out to this rig in the middle of the North Sea that was built in the 70s, and I'm sort of looking about, being like, far out. This no one told me about this at uni, like. And I was
Aye.
offshore for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever it may have been. But yeah, just a phenomenal experience at that point. Yeah.
That is
Mm.
amazing. I guess we'll start to kind of go into where your career has kind of like evolved into, like into the kind of more data. But I think what's really important at this point to understand from you is how much value do you put on, you and I spoke about this beforehand, that kind of traditional, almost tangible engineering, physical, actually in front of you. How much value do you put on that experience now and throughout your career? In terms of when you've kind of moved into kind of more senior roles, but also more within the kind of tech world.
Oh, you cannot, especially in my area, which is still the energy sector, but you cannot put price on truly sitting, standing in the middle of the asset that you're managing and supporting, and touching it and being part of it and understanding how that operates, and in that traditional engineering sense, which is fundamentally, if you think about engineering, it's about logic, it's about system thinking, it's about those sort of things. They are absolutely core components to everything I do in my job now. You cannot put price on exposure to that sort of experience, like you just can't. And I just advocate for anyone who's in engineering, who's going through education just now, who's thinking about, do I jump into more, all the buzzwords, the AI, all the good stuff, or do I think about traditional, that electrical engineering, that is just cannot be more valuable to get that exposure, because you really understand what you're dealing with. And I look at the future now, and we can go into this whenever you want, Josh, but I look at the future now, and that engineering capability, electrical, civil, mechanical, whatever it is, we will need those. We will continue to need those. The transportation industry isn't going anywhere. The network, the energy sector is only getting more complex. We need people to solve these problems. So for me, getting that first hands-on experience is just critical. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's
Mm.
amazing, and thanks for sharing that, Graham. So you moved from Maersk into, is it Wavestone you moved to, and this was like starting to evolve into like data and digital transformation. Did you do anything at Maersk, or was it did you make the conscious decision to move
Yeah.
towards kind of more data side of things?
So what happened with that is, so I'm going through this sort of traditional, that control system stuff, and I'm seeing a lot of there was a huge movement, especially in the Middle East at the time, to look at our assets and think about digital twins, looking at scanning of these assets, looking at remote sort of IoT sensors and devices. So the topic of data was starting to sort of appear quite a lot. And I remember there was one night I was sitting out. I was out. I remember very clearly. I was on the Bibby Sapphire, which is a dive support vessel that goes out to the rigs to do. And I was sitting out in this vessel, and there was a guy, and I cannot remember the guy's name. He was from maybe Subsea 7 or one of the other big companies up there. And we were sitting, and I was chatting. We were doing the night shift, and I'm sort of sitting, and we're speaking to him, and he's saying, "Far out, this data thing. We should probably get involved in that in some way." And it just completely this like light bulb went on in my head. It just kind of sparked open. I thought, far out, I maybe do need to do this. So I came back from that offshore trip, started looking at things, and I actually thought, well, I'm going to go and get educated on this. So I actually, at what would that have been, 26? So I was now 4 years out of uni, 4 years out of uni, fully in my career, starting to I'd left the graduate program, I was full time, I was on the chartered path for engineering, and I thought, I think this might be the future here. And I ended up going down, ended up applying for a university in London, UCL, so University College of London. Ended up
Yep.
going down there to do a master's in what was called analytics with management. So it was kind of this amazing, it was a kind of another full-time master's, but it was an amazing sort of halfway house between computer science and management in the business school. So I was getting access to the business world, I was getting access to the deep tech world, and I did a year down there studying again. So went back to uni, and then I ended up thinking, well, hang on a minute here. I've learned heaps of stuff from engineering, this logic, the systems thinking. I can see how to solve complex problems. I've now been educated in computer science, machine learning, all the stuff. And I thought, surely there's other industries that need this, right? So I jumped into very traditional consultancy. So went into management consultancy and started getting involved there. And that was Wavestone. That was that organization, and an amazing company in London that expanded out of France. And but in London, you get very quickly kind of put into different things, and the big thing is finance down there. So I was in this sort of finance world, and I kind of look about and I'm thinking, I was an engineer a minute ago in a rig. Like, what am I doing here? And I'm now sitting in Canary Wharf, and I'm thinking, far out here. But again, the engineering principles allowed me to, what I think, be quite a good consultant. And I was using really analytical skill sets. I was starting to get more involved in data. And that was really that transition, what I call, out of that traditional engineering into this innovative world, I think. And it was really at that point. So that was how that transition happened for me. Yeah.
And was there any particular skill sets from in terms of utilizing Python, JavaScript,
Mm,
C++,
mm,
whatever, and that you
mm.
were tapping into when you were moving into that role that from what
Oh,
you developed or had exposure to at university? What were you? What was that? What were those
that's a
skills?
good call. Yeah. So up in Glasgow, up at Strathclyde, like when I was going through uni there, we focused heavy on Java, and then we went into C++ as a coding language. And then fast forward those 4 years, I'm now down in London. And when we're looking at analytics, I was getting really involved in Python, obviously getting upskilled a lot in SQL, kind of base language. But SQL, Python was doing a lot. I then did my dissertation on machine learning at that point, and was really focused on that, like real back end data stuff. But yeah, when I went into consultancy, that was where there was a bit of a movement, and it's amazing how you get trained in all this coding stuff, and then you get put into the real world, into corporate, and it's like, hang on a minute, we're still using an Excel doc here, or we're still sort of behind in it. And I don't, we can have a good discussion about that, because I don't think we're far behind. I think that's still maybe the case, but it was amazing to see how you're sort of trained in all this future thinking, and then in the real world you're still caught up in, we're still using these legacy systems, mate. So it's that sort of discussion. So yeah, but it was Python and SQL and R and all the coding languages. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
It's really interesting to see this. So recently, one of our summer session events was 18 students there, and all of them from different universities. So five different universities. I think there was about maybe five or six different courses, from chemical to mechanical to product design
Oh, yeah.
engineering to triple E, and all of them either said that they want to utilize their skills in Python or want to further develop their skills in
Oh,
Python.
yeah.
And then within a week of that, I spoke to a company, and so they're kind of like in fintech, and they were saying, "Oh, we're looking for this, 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 and this." And I said, "Have you thought about people who are doing these courses?" No, 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 no. We only go for this course. I'm like, really? I'm like, you really need to see like what students are coming out with, because it's that whole
Yeah,
like kind of understanding of what students have kind of either had exposure to or wanting to learn versus the kind of old school. This is the box we're looking to fill, and this is what they have to have. So
right.
it was really interesting you saying that there,
Do you know?
because you know the skill
Yeah,
sets you tap into at uni are sometimes
oh,
not misunderstood by industry, I think.
oh, okay. We probably need to. I could talk all day about all these different stories, but if I really fast forward into my career now, like I run a data team. I have a team about me focused on AI. We've got all the good stuff going. The degrees I look for are the triple E's or the mechanical engineers. I'm looking for those guys. I'm not looking for the guy that came out a computer science degree. I genuinely am not. Okay, of course I might, of course it depends, but I'm looking for that. I'm absolutely looking for those degrees, and I'm now sitting in a position where I work alongside what we would deem as traditional engineers, and we can go into that. But I'm definitely we're on that spectrum of more techy. We're more in the innovation, more tech suite. But in terms of education, I'm absolutely looking for guys, people coming out like Triple E, for example. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So you spent some time in London, and then you made the big move to New Zealand, to Auckland, where you've had a couple of
Yeah,
roles, obviously with data analytics. So talk me through moving to New Zealand. How's it been? And obviously you've been there for a number of years now.
yeah. So I down in London. So yeah, down in London, I met my now wife. Yeah, and she's Kiwi. She's a Kiwi. She's from Auckland. She woke up one day and sort of looked at me and went, "I think it's time for me to go home." And I thought, "Far out. Well, I better join you then. I kind of like you." So I ended up. I say I come back here as like as a piece of her baggage. Like I ended up just tying it along in the background. But we yeah came here and it was mad. It was 2 weeks before COVID hit. So we really just, I
All right.
literally left London just before COVID and got out here just before COVID. So yeah, came out here. Yeah, we're now married. We have kids. We have an amazing life out here, and it's a wonderful place. But yeah, it was a big jump to make. But the amazing thing is that you come here and it's 5 million people. It's I can literally go to the shop. This isn't a joke. I can go to the shop down the road and I can get iron brew if I want. Like it
Brilliant.
feels so far away from home, but it's just not far away from home. And there's people that I know here who are friends with my other friends back in Scotland and stuff. So it's just amazing to say you're 18,000 kilometers away, but far out. You're really not that far from home. So yeah, Scotland are actually playing rugby down here on Friday night. So it's going to be a good big night. Yeah, so
Brilliant.
it's just all these sort of things. But yeah, I came down here and from a career perspective, just before COVID, thought I better apply for jobs, wanted to stay in consultancy because I thought that was a really good place for me to be. It allowed me to use all these skills across different sectors. It allowed me to continuously focus and upskilling and more in the innovation and technology suite and get more at the forefront of that. So ended up, there's a kind of long story with this, but kind of jumped about a couple of consultancies, some big ones, PwC, for example, I was with for a couple of years. I was with some smaller ones that are actually quite big out here and sort of just really understood the landscape more. And I went through the consultancy route because of the opportunities to get exposed to the top table of businesses. I found that really interesting. I've always had that business sort of mindset in my head. And I wanted the exposure to where the decisions are sort of being made in these businesses. And I started to really get that as I kind of progressed through my career. So kind of a wee bit more senior you get, the more access to the top tier clients you get and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's been an amazing, I've now been out here 5 years and it's been the most amazing time out here. And I really love it out here. And we have a lovely life with the beaches and the mountains and stuff. So it's beautiful. But yeah, from a career perspective, it's just been absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. And then I think there was about I always knew I wanted to do consultancy for a specific period of time. I always thought that was interesting and I could learn lots, but I always knew I wanted to go back into industry. It's where I'm best at, it's where I want to focus. And I always knew I wanted to go back into the energy sector. So about a year ago, I made that transition back out and I came into an organization called Vector. What Vector are, they're the largest electricity distributor in the country. We have a really strange structure here. We have 29 distributors, which is mad to say for 5
Jeepers.
million people. It's mad.
That's
We've got a very strange setup here. It's actually quite a good business case. If you ever want to know about the energy system as a whole, look at New Zealand. There's a lot on it, but we have
that's
yeah. So
interesting.
we have a really strange but we're the largest. So the company I'm with, we service about 2 million people, roughly, just a bit below actually, but 2 million people, about 600,000 homes. Like yeah, we're pretty big, and yeah. And my job there is I head up data and analytics now for the whole of the enterprise. So that's everything from I run all the platforms. I look at innovation coming into that. I look at the governance and how we secure the data. Yeah, there's a lot of different components, but it's a phenomenal job, and it's lovely to be back into the industry side of things. Yeah.
That's amazing, and your lifestyle sounds amazing. So yeah, awesome. I'm going to see Scotland against New Zealand later on in the year, so I'll be thinking about you
There
when
you go.
I'm at Murrayfield.
Don't worry,
So.
I always wear the Scotland top. You're all right. My missus, however,
Yeah,
definitely wears the Kiwi top, the All Blacks top. Yeah. So.
it would be I'm definitely going to be asking you obviously about AI, but in terms of your data analytics, where did you see the transition from when I'm guessing from your exposure to data and with your role within consultancies? Obviously, within consultancies, you tend to get involved with a lot, tend to be volume of projects. So you see different clients, and
Mm.
therefore you get a good spread. So when did you start to see it evolving from data analytics to data analytics and AI? When did you start to see AI come through? And I'm asking that as someone who, like most people, has seen artificial intelligence kick in over the last maybe 24 months,
Yep.
36 months. But obviously, I've always known that we were going to evolve to some sort of machine based learning. So,
Yep.
from your perspective, how have you seen it evolve compared to others?
Yeah, like so that masters back in London, I literally did the dissertation on machine learning when machine learning is one subcomponent, some area within artificial based intelligence. So yeah, I guess fundamentally really got full exposure back in 2017, something like this. And that's where I sort of the start the sort of eyes open up to where that topic's going. And we've definitely rode the wave of that. Like, it's always been what I call the topic's always been like research and development. It's always sort of been that small team that sit over and this the Silicon Valley thing. It sort of sits over here and it's never really embedded in the business. And then and you're right, probably 24 months, maybe a wee bit something like that with Chat GPT. I mean, fundamentally, what's happened here is that OpenAI have sat down at some point and probably their, I don't know, I'm making this up, their marketing officer, chief marketing officer said, do you know what? Our business model is going to be, we're going to go straight to customer. We're going to B2C. We're not going to go B2B because this story is going to be too hard to sell to every company. So they've put it in the hands of you and me and said, go and use it for your personal life. Go and, I don't know, search a holiday or where you can visit when you come to Auckland or whatever. And then all of a sudden, that's just catapulted, just absolutely rocketed the use of this into the professional lives as well. So, yeah, you're right. Like, the topic's not actually that new. Like, it's been a huge amount of development and research into it. But right in the hands of the individual has definitely been the past couple of years. And I guess from a consultancy and kind of my career perspective, I really started to talk about I was doing a lot of talking about predictive based analytics. How can we predict things that are going to happen on the network? How can we predict things that are going to happen on in energy trends and the system and the banking world, whatever it may be, but really starting to look at that artificial based intelligence probably about 2 years ago again, maybe a wee bit longer, but that's really when I started to get true exposure to the topic of it and where it's going and how humans are working with it as well. That's the big thing I think is how's this
Yeah.
fitting into Josh and Graham's average sort of day or whatever, right?
Yeah. I mean, you and I spoke about before this about the number of bits of AI that we're
It's
using
impressive,
and
right?
integrating. It's, it's
That's the other
unbelievable.
real.
I mean,
This is all AI. I'm
yeah,
not actually. Yeah. So
exactly. Well, I know it's. I mean, yeah. I mean, across the board, I find it all fascinating, and it's funny because
mm,
when I think back to my link into it all, so with my degree studying computed mechanical engineering, I used a lot of finite element analysis software and
oh yeah,
computational fluid dynamics. Now,
oh yeah,
so I I see the parallels certainly with AI and even something like finite analysis, like you mentioned there about that kind of you know looking ahead to see where failure points would be.
Mm,
There is a kind of like large language models, lots of data sets, how you basically extract the data out of it.
right.
In a way, it's always been there. It's just how we're now utilizing it more, which I find fascinating.
That's a really great call, and that's absolutely right. So in terms of my role just now, then, so I'm sitting in an electricity distributor. I sit cover the topic on twofold things. I cover one in terms of how do the workforce use this. I think about that. I deploy a lot of solutions on that. That's a big focus. But the other is about how do we truly leverage this in our core operations. So when I think about the management of assets, or how do we maintain those assets, so the network, I think about how do we plan growth on that network. How, these sort of decisions, how are we truly thinking about the impact of our work on the end customer of the network, like these sort of things, and we're really thinking about how we can leverage AI within that. So for me, it's like, how do you get it as close to the core operation of that business is really important. And when you're dealing with an asset, just like everything, a lot of engineering, I was thinking about this as well before I jumped on here. A lot When I was an engineer, one project that I worked on, here's a project, right? I was in the Middle East, and we're thinking about control systems. And one of the things that we were doing was around the control systems of the rigs, right? That means I'm not talking about the wells, I'm talking above surface, right? So one of the things we focused on was the HVAC, so the heating and ventilation, right? So the AC units. And we were thinking about, I'm a graduate at this point, just remember, right? And I'm thinking about, how do I provide the right level of air conditioning for the subsea paint that we used to house out there? So this paint would be highly flammable. And if it reached a certain temperature, it could just like boom, it could just explode. So,
Yeah,
and we're on a rig, and you kind of don't want it, to explode. So one of the things that, but I'm a graduate. I'm literally making these calls about what these temperatures are and how we could do this, and designing solutions and looking at the risk tolerance and the profile of that project and that initiative and that delivery. And I'm sort of going through this. And one of the things that engineering really taught me, in my experience from engineering, is about, you really understand consequences of doing something. So if I have a system and it doesn't go the way I want the system to work, the consequence can be genuinely catastrophic. It literally can be, right? So what I'm trying to say there is, now when I sit in my role and I'm talking about an electricity network, I'm talking about electricity flowing to people's houses. I'm talking about how that electricity now fundamentally enables those people to move about the world. Like half of people's, well, EVs are plugged into this, right? Or heating their
yeah,
water because of all the hot water boilers are now electric, or cooking their dinner on their stovetop tonight. Like, it's not gas powered; it's all electricity powered. So I think about these things, and I think, you know what, if I bring a lack of stability to that network through trying to do something with AI and trying to do something fancy, the impact can be actually really negative on that. So for me, it's amazing when I think about those experiences as an engineer, I still bring that into how do we deploy innovation into that network. We're not supposed to be risky. We want to be stable. We want to be in control of that electricity and how we distribute it. And now we're trying to do something innovative. And you and I spoke again before this, and we spoke about the topic of AI is going so fast. Josh, it's going so fast that we as organizations, I'm not talking about mine, I'm talking about every organization, are trying to almost keep up to that pace of development. And that in itself makes you go, hang on, am I fully in control of this? And am I not? These sort of questions. And I was kind of thinking about the parallel of that. And it's very true. Like, we as engineers are about risk management. We're about truly being in control of a system that we're embedding in. And now we're thinking about innovation, and we're thinking about, where do we find the balance of that? What's the equilibrium? What's the bite point on that? And it's something quite
yeah.
interesting that I take into my job. Yeah.
That's brilliant. So I mean, you've pulled us straight into the point then. So I might as well ask then. So how do you see as a student at the moment then? What
Mm.
advice would you give to an engineering student when it comes to AI? So on one hand, a lot of people worry
Oh,
that AI is going to take over people's jobs. Okay,
yeah.
and on the other hand, there's a massive opportunity in terms of exploring the tools, how you can utilize them, how they can benefit you both as a as a in a personal life, but also professionally. What
Yeah.
advice would you give to a student who's studying engineering around the topic of AI and the tools that are available?
Yeah, great question, and it's one that there's probably lots of different angles you could take on this, but I would say a hypothesis. I believe this. I believe that AI will allow us to remove a lot of our administration burden. I think that's definitely here to stay, right? So we will get more streamlined in doing things. We will be able to focus our time on solving things that really truly need computation, well, kind of like theoretical computation about we'll be able to focus on solving problems rather than just focus our time in admin. I think that will come and take over that job, right? But the one
Mhm.
thing I absolutely will argue, and I do really believe this, I cannot see this happening, is that engineers of the future will have to truly work in unison, in parallel with AI. We will need to find ways on bringing the physical world with the digital world and sort of finding connection points of those. And it will absolutely not take away those the triple E program. It will not take away the skill sets that you absorb from that, the roles of an electrical engineer. It will not. It will only be truly embedded in to enable engineers to fundamentally solve harder problems, and harder purely because you've now got more time to focus on solving problems and delivering solutions that truly will make a lasting impact. So I think one of the things that I think about a lot is the merge of physical and digital world. So let me explain that maybe. So when I think of the electricity grid and I think of all the wires and poles in the ground, and that's the physical world, I'm now thinking about what does that digital version of that look like? How can we look at scenario modeling, play out planning in the digital world so that we're a lot more impactful and effective when we go out into that physical world and actually change the pole or change out the wire or predict that maintenance or whatever it may be. So I just think that my advice to engineers or future engineers who are going through education just now, or even are early in their career, are just lean in closer to it, get creative with it, learn where it can be embedded into your skill set, and where you can collectively see a greater impact. And I think as individuals we'll miss out if we don't lean into that creative side of it, and if we don't look at ways for enhancing our output or our impact or our problem solving or whatever it may be. So yeah, just really lean into it more, I think, is the advice. It's not going anywhere, you're not going anywhere. It's about this unison that we move forward in solving the harder problems. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. I guess there's one thing you can control, and it's the moment that we're in at the moment, and
Yeah.
immersing yourself and exposing yourself to your chosen area of engineering. Maybe trying to maybe kind of exploring out with it as well, where you get the opportunity, so that you're staying relevant within the field of engineering, and then how then the technology flows with that is kind of three areas which can work. So
One.
I can't help by asking how did you find the Snowflake Summit when you went out to San Fran? Was that awesome?
Oh, right. Yeah, that was mad. That was absolutely wild. I ended up, so one of the big things that if people are in the data world, you might have heard of this organization called Snowflake. What that is, it's one of the probably one of the largest now sort of data organizations, but they basically build cloud-based data platforms, kind of, to keep it kind of simple. But yeah, and they have this summit out in San Francisco that just happened there, and I ended up jumping in a plane and heading out there for a few days and being part of it. And I mean, Josh, just the world of AI and the world of data is just unbelievable, and what people are doing with this is unbelievable as well. So I was out there and very lucky to get exposure to the guys like Sam Altman is sitting 20 meters from me having a discussion about what he sees as the future. I'm hearing from guys who are amazingly advanced technologists who are sitting in the research labs of all the big universities in the world. I was getting exposure to the Silicon Valley vibe, if you want to call it. Like you're walking. It's funny, you're walking down the. Do you know, this is mad. You're walking down the street, and there's this organization called Waymo. Have you heard of Waymo? Do you know who they are?
No, I've not heard of it. No.
So basically, Waymo, if you should look it up, it's mad. It's Waymo. Waymo is basically it was spun out the back of Google. Google have this. sort of really focused innovation company called X. It's called Moonshot, the Moonshot Lab or something.
Yeah,
And what
yeah,
they do is they're
yeah. I know what you
trying
mean.
to solve, yeah, so they're trying to solve the hardest problems in the world. Waymo came out the back of
Yeah.
that. What Waymo is they're self-driving cars, right? So you go to San Francisco now, and there's, Josh, I'm not kidding. There's Waymos everywhere. All these self-driving cars, and you're paying the same amount as an Uber, and it comes along and it stops in front of you, door opens up, and you get in, and no one's there, and it says, "Put on your seatbelt. What music do you want? How do you like the aircon?" Like it's talking to you, and then next minute the indicator goes, and the car takes off into the street, and away it goes, and like I'm sort of white knuckled holding the door because I'm thinking I don't know where my trust level lies in this, but it's doing something right, and it's but I think what was fascinating about that is that you're seeing firsthand in places like San Francisco how AI and how these topics are truly being embedded into quite traditional industries, I guess, in a way. Like we all said the horse and cart, and then Ford came out and put in the engine and put out the Model T, and now fast forward, what was that back in the 40s, a bit earlier than the 40s, but fast or way earlier than 40s, maybe 20s or something. Fast forward all the way up until now, and then you've now got people that don't drive cars, and cars are just zooming about everywhere, and it was just mad, but it was a great experience, and I think like that's definitely something that's been offered to a lot of organisations, is truly seeing firsthand where this topic is going, and specifically in certain industries and certain fields, and it's just great to jump on board with that and seeing it play out. Yeah, I thought it was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I love it. I obviously follow you on LinkedIn, and I loved when I saw you had the opportunity to go out there, and it's funny because at the exact same time I was probably starting to immerse myself in like the Scottish kind of kind
Oh
of
yeah.
entrepreneurial world, and getting to like there's an event in Glasgow called Tectonic, which
Oh yeah.
from someone who's got a business which is all about trying to get people into careers in engineering, which it isn't, it's not a tech business, but I utilize tech, but then see being around people who are developing tech, I
Mm,
just find it so empowering.
yeah.
Because it's a mindset as well. So I can only
Yeah.
imagine what it's like when you're in what I mean I would call the kind of global kind of like nucleus of it, over in San Francisco, and it's amazing.
Like it really was, but there's pockets of gold happening everywhere with this. Like even here in New Zealand, we've got an amazing companies spinning up left, right, and centre who are getting incredible amount of funding towards them, hundreds of millions of dollars to continue investing and build their solutions. And I think for me, like if there's one thing that maybe I could get across to the listeners and even just have a discussion on is going through engineering and leaning in on these organizations and leaning in on these programs, these engineering programs, it will just set you up for an amazing future of solving these problems, of truly understanding how these systems work, how logic can be laid down and solve these problems. And I just think like that will absolutely set you apart from a lot of other programs and people in the industry. And I just think it's so important to continue to anchor on that stuff. And I think like now the ability to using AI based tooling, the ability to build a company, Josh, like mate, you could build a company. We could literally sit here for the next 3 hours and build something that's fully productionized. We've got a whole website, we've got a call center that people phone to. We could do that no problem. So the ability to take an idea to market now, the speed of that is just so quick. And I think like having that engineering mindset of solving problems, being creative, thinking beyond the boundary of the current limitation of whatever you're looking at, it will set you off in amazing positions in the future. And I think like if you dabble a bit of entrepreneurial mindset into that, if you think about ways in which you can truly impact the customer or the user of that thing, that service, that system, whatever it may be, there's lots of opportunities to take your career down lots of different paths. Like there is no way. I've always wanted to stay in energy, but there's no way 7, 6, 5 years ago, I would think I'm doing the job I'm doing today. No chance, mate. Sitting out in the North Sea, sitting in a rig with the boiler suit on, and trying to figure out some sort of like control system design, and now thinking I'm talking about innovation and how we can use artificial based intelligence. It felt so world apart, like it really did. But I think just being curious, taking the opportunity, bringing that entrepreneurial mindset, and just solving problems, it'll get you there. I really think that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this, Graham. I love your passion for it as well. The curious engineering mindset, entrepreneurialism. I
Mm,
told you beforehand. AI has been fundamental to the growth of engineering career, and
mm,
I think one thing I've been saying a lot to as I've kind of more exposure to that kind of entrepreneurial kind of world is if you couple engineering and entrepreneurialism into the same area, you've got a very powerful cocktail, I think, and I've seen it firsthand, certainly in the last few months, having met a number of startups who are doing awesome things, and it's all
yeah.
because they've got curiosity, but they want to challenge something, they want to give it a go, and
Mm,
all buzzwords you normally hear, but they're kind of true, and
yeah.
I like the fact that you're an organisation. You and I hadn't planned to talk about entrepreneurship here. We
No.
planned to talk about AI, and
Yeah.
but they do all kind of intermingle with one another.
100% do, like, absolutely, they 100% do, yeah. And I think, like, I set out here in New Zealand, but again, the market, the industry, the economy as a whole probably isn't too far off what Scotland is just now, right? And one of the things that we're seeing a lot, and you don't need to research this, you go too far to see this answer, but the skills gap is real. The aging workforce that are about to leave these organizations, these really amazing energy companies, transportation, manufacturing companies, these true engineers that have spent years in their trade are about to potentially leave the workforce because of age, and they're taking IP that you can never even try and conjure up what they know, right? And you're left with a huge opportunity as young graduates, young engineers, people who are in the first X period of time of their career to really accelerate their ability to deliver on the outcomes that's expected, or challenge those, whatever it may be, those initiatives, those projects, those things, those assets that the company manages. But we're at a real changing point there, and we need to fundamentally find ways as engineers to lean in closer to technology, to elevate that, to drive us forward, to leverage the impact and the value add of technology and innovation and AI and all the good stuff. And just now is genuinely a perfect time, and I think we'll continue to see that for the next 10 years or whatever. Statistically, we actually will, like, the numbers actually will flow that way. So for me, it's like this is an amazing time to be in this career, to be thinking about being an engineer, to learn and expand and grow in all these opportunities. Like, just go for it, 100% lean in on it. Yeah, it's perfect time.
Go for it. I love it. I love it, Graham. And usually as we come close to the end of the podcast, I usually ask this question. I usually ask, what excites you about
All right,
engineering, and
that's
it
what
doesn't
you
have to
can
be.
tell,
And
eh?
I'm not even going to ask it. I feel like this whole episode has just
Yeah,
covered. The episode should be
you know,
called "What Excites You About Engineering: The Future of Engineering."
yeah, yeah.
But
Someone in my work the other day was like, so my title's GM of Data and Analytics for the enterprise. Right? That's my title, right? And I walked into a meeting and someone was like, "Oh, here's the GM of Hype." They were like, "Oh, Hype is up, Grim." Mate, like, I'm like, guys, I'm not just here as a cheerleader. Like, I actually do know a couple of things, I think. Like, it was kind of funny, but I'm just incredibly passionate about the subject. I'm passionate about everything about this. And yeah, and I think as well, like, Josh, if you don't mind, like, I'm find me on LinkedIn, reach out to me, ask me questions. I can take calls with people who are questioning these things, because I think it's so important that we drive graduates, young engineers into these careers, and provide them opportunity. So whatever it takes to help give people ideas
yeah.
and guidance and counsels and mentorship, just yeah, reach out. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, no, definitely. Well, away from LinkedIn, I'm going to hopefully get you on the talent network, and you can maybe do some
Yeah.
sort of masterclass with the students we've
Yeah.
got on there. Hundreds of
Yeah.
students sitting on there. That kind of one to one would be amazing. So we'll chat about that
Perfect.
maybe separately and get that lined
No,
up.
we can do
So
that.
I guess go. Yeah, that'd be amazing. Thank you. I mean, we'll go back on to kind of as I begin to close things off. What are some of your personal goals and your personal career goals for the rest of your career? Is there anything that's kind of at the forefront of your mind at the moment?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is, like, we this is me going into the energy system. I hope this is okay. It's taking us a wee bit away
That's
from
fine. Yeah,
what
yeah, absolutely. Well, we need it. So
for me, I think, like, the fascinating about the fascinating about the sector is that we've got technology transformation, so all this buzzy stuff, but we've also got the energy sector as a whole is going through this massive transformation. we're leaning in on EVs, we're leaning in on batteries, we're looking at solar panels on roof. Our traditional single place of generation going through a distribution network to the household is changing. Now we've got people next door who literally have solar panels on their roof and are sort of self-managed, and they, from a tariff perspective, put money or put electricity back into the network for money basically. But the thing about that is, for me, like the area that I really want to focus in and grow closer to is we need to think about that transition, that energy, the future of energy from more of a system. We need to get involved with the generators, we need to get involved with the retailers, we need to get involved with the transmission organization. So even though I'm in my job and I love the distribution side, my goal and my passion and my focus is how do we really truly solve this energy crisis or opportunity, depends how full your glass is, but how do we get closer to that? And that's a problem that I really want to keep locking in on, and goals to grow towards understanding in that, and fundamentally being part of that as well. It will really shape the future for our lives. I think it's probably one of the biggest transformations in an industry perspective you and I will see in our lifetime, is the energy sector. And so yeah, my goal is to get closer to that, yeah, and help people get more involved in that as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's all. Thanks for sharing that, Graham. That's also an amazing message, because I talk about messaging being so important when you're attracting people into an industry or a
Mm,
sector. And I think, we hear of renewable, or the net zero, or the transition, or
yeah,
sustainability, but actually the detail behind it's probably more powerful when we're
yeah,
attracting talent into it. So that kind of whole system approach, the integration between, like you said, developers, and having more. Instead of like the kind of traditional routes of like single
yeah,
generation, having the kind of
yeah,
multiple. We've obviously got nuclear's discussed a lot in the UK, and SMR, small modular reactors. So there's
yeah.
this whole kind of different landscape to what we're used to,
Like,
and really homing into the detail of that is so
yeah.
attractive. I find it attractive anyway.
Oh, 100%. Like I heard a fun fact the other day. Do you guys, this, I feel weird asking this, in the UK and Scotland, do you have BYD, the cars BYD?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
We
cool.
do.
Yeah. So
Chinese mate.
sorry, because they're kind of new here. They kind of came in a couple of years ago. They came down to New Zealand, but BYD, obviously massive organization. The fun fact about them is they have 18,000 people just within their research and development lab for their batteries
Yeah,
that they use within BYD. Like, so I'm pretty confident on making a hypothesis that batteries will get better in terms of longer range
yeah,
on cars, more safe, etc. But so this transition, it's not like it's kind of 10, 15 years away. It's not like we can idea about it, we'll get there. It's like genuinely happening now. Like, we need to get on top of it. So the more creative minds and the more ways in doing that, the better. But it just, like, the scale and the speed even in the energy system is amazing. Yeah. So yeah. That's a whole other
Graham,
podcast.
this has been
I could take it down a whole other road, but
no.
we stop there. Eh? Let's go into
I think
economics.
I
You want to do
think
that?
I think we're going to come off the back of this and go and line up the next podcast. I think, because we could go forever here. This is
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Thank you. Listen, thank you so much for coming on, Graham. It's been amazing hearing. I feel like we've just kind of just hit the surface, but it's been really great catching up with you and hearing about your career. But like
Cool.
anything, I love hearing people's passions. It's something that
Mm,
almost I find it's infectious, and
that's
and I know there's been so much across this episode that students and graduates and the community are going to learn so much from, but also
awesome.
probably go away and investigate and immerse themselves in more, which probably is more important. So
Yeah.
so thank you so much, Graham, for coming on. The final thing I always ask people is what keeps you passionate about engineering. So the floor is yours, Graham.
Just, I think the world's biggest problems are engineering based. I really genuinely do. I think the way we move about the world, transportation, I think the way we manufacture, I think the growth of robotics, I think the energy system, these are all engineering. And I just cannot lean in closer on and state more clearly that the mindset, it's just so important for our future. And I'm incredibly passionate about that, and just want to keep flying that flag from the tallest building I can get on, because it's just so important, right? So yeah, that's probably it.
Well, it's I'm hearing it. So you didn't have to go on the
We've got two in the
podcast to
club.
yeah.
We've got the two of us.
Well, I know it's coming from you, and
Yeah.
it's amazing when someone does something when you follow them, that then how much it resonates. Like for example,
Yeah,
I reached out to you just very quickly after you went to San Francisco after a post I put about Scotland engineering the world, and because
yeah,
I'm really passionate about that, and you know I really want people who are coming through our system are picking engineering to see where they can go. And if it's Auckland, then look at Graham. If it's
yeah, no,
Vancouver, might be my
yeah,
sister. If it's
yeah.
Riyadh, I've got plenty of people over there. If it's Paris, it's in Scotland, it's engineering the world, and you're an amazing example of that.
Well, that's a whole, like, we could go down a whole other route in terms of the Middle East just now, and the amazing things that are
Yeah.
going out there, right? So, and I think there's another, sorry, one last takeaway. Mate, we could go back and forth on this. One
No,
last takeaway, right?
good.
It's like engineering genuinely is like a common language across all of this. There's nothing I do in Auckland, New Zealand, that I did not learn sitting in that classroom in Strathclyde and sitting in those lectures and listening to those events, and it's the exact same. It's literally the exact same, and I think it is the common language. So the exposure to the world is it's all there. Yeah. Cool.
Exactly. Well, Graham, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Probably long overdue, but I'm so excited to release this. So excited for people to hear it.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks a lot, Graham.